Hello everyone. Now let's start out this knife build with some 3-inch square tubing, and this is about 4 inches long. I paint the inside with some white spray paint. It contains titanium dioxide. The titanium keeps it from sticking to the components from the inside, so you can separate the canister later. So this canister mask is going to be made with chain. I have all these lengths of chain here, and I've cut them into lengths and I've folded them back and forth a little pattern. I'm just going to stack these chain sections, these little layers of chain. I'm going to make sure my end plate of the canister can fit. And then I'm just going to fill that with metal powder. And this metal powder is 1080 powder with 4% nickel. So it'll have a really good bright contrast. Nickel stays shiny. The higher the nickel content, the shinier it'll be. Like 2% is a certain kind of contrast, 4% is a little bit brighter. And so I just keep stacking these. Now this is roller chain. This is industrial double roller chain. And the roller chain has a few different steels. The pins are actually like a heat treated pin. And then the side plates are actually, there's a couple different steels, and those turn different colors as well. Different shades of gray when you're etching it later on after you've forged the blade. So after all the powder gets added, I weld that little end cap inside there, and that seals it all up. So you don't want any oxygen getting in. You want that sealed. Then you take a little handle. I use square handles mostly. I have a special set of tongs that work really well with square handles. And you really got to build this weld up really well. This weld, if you just tack it on there at the temperatures it's going to be at, it'll just fall off. So you got to do a really good weld. Well, here's my forge. I'm at around 2300 ish, and that probe reads a little hotter than it actually is usually. So here's this canister. This is the first heat. It's going right in the hydraulic press. And I have some squaring dies. So there's some squaring dies here. And these squaring dies are perfect. They put pressure from 4 directions. They really consolidate that canister material. And you got to make sure it heats up. A big, thick, this is 3-inch by 3-inch square. You have to let it soak in your furnace for, I would say, 10 to 15 minutes once it gets up to temperature. And so you got to make sure if the center of this square is not up to temperature, you'll have all sorts of problems. So it's best to let it soak, let it heat up, make sure you're at that forge welding temp, which is around 2300. It can be a little lower for canister Damascus, I found, but something thick like this, I run at 2300 degrees in my furnace. So I'm just going to keep elongating this, guys. You can keep elongating it and drawing it out, and I'll end up with something about 2-inch by 2-inch square from the original 3-inch by 3-inch. And here's the canister. So this canister cuts off very easy. This white paint contains titanium, and it keeps it from sticking to that chain and the powder on the inside, and it works perfectly. So you can see here a couple of cuts along the edge, and this chain, this metal can is separated right out. Now here's what's left. This was inside the canister. So it does have a little bit of titanium paint residue on the outside, but this is all consolidated. It looks totally solid. No, it doesn't. I can't see any delaminations. I did discover some later on as I was forging. It looks like I had a few little cold fuses, but so here I'm on my bandsaw, and I'm just going to take a slice right off of this. And this is this chain Damascus. And I cut a little thicker than I need. I'm going to draw this out. This is going to be lengthened. So here it is, this little section, just in my furnace, coming up to temp. And I have 3 or 4 heats to get it to shape and draw it out. And then I got some hand forming to do too. So here I'm in my press, and I get this drawn out. You can see there's a curve induced in this. This is going to be a curved blade. It's going to look like a Karambit, I guess would be the most accurate blade that's similar to it. But it's not really a traditional karambit. It's much bigger than a karambit, and the handle's a little different. The handle's going to be made out of chain, actually. So, uh, but anyway, the amount of material I have, I'm shooting for around a 1/4 inch thickness. So I'm going to draw this out and curve. And on my dies, I can actually induce that curvature. See how that billet's starting to curve? I can control that by how I angle it into these rounding dies, these drawing dies here. Excuse me. And so I'm going to keep drawing this out, flattening it, curving it, drawing it out, and narrowing that tip down. In each one of these heats, this piece gets a little longer, trying to maintain that curve. And then I'm getting close to this shape I'm looking for. Now, I could have just ground it all to shape, but that's a stock removal process. So I want this Damascus pattern to curve and morph. I want it to morph with the blade. So here I am. You can do, you practice a little bit, you can get pretty accurate. I'm pre-beveling here. I'm doing some beveling. I'm doing a little more curving. I'm straightening this out. I'm refining that tip. So some hand forming is very, very effective. And this is it right off of my grinder. I'm still a little thicker than what I need to be, and that's good. I want to leave a little meat after I heat treat to do a grind to grind it back. But you can see here, guys, this is what I was talking about. I had a few, it didn't affect the utility of the knife. I had a few little kind of minor, I don't know if they were a lack of fusion or if they were like an inclusion of some kind of something. I'm really not sure what happened there. But on to the next. So I've got all my safety gear up here. I got my dust cup and my safety glasses. So now I'm going to reduce this a little bit in thickness. I'm going to square up the sides and get them parallel. And then I'm also kind of getting it, I'm flattening it. I'm getting it parallel and kind of tuning up some of a few of the inconsistencies from forging. Now, this next shot, I got a beveling jig, and I kind of made it myself. I copied another one. I had seen one of these beveling jigs somewhere else, and I kind of adapted it to my grinder. Now, this is very important. I see some people doing this operation, and the belt's running towards them. And look at the direction of the belt, guys. See how it's going away from me? And you want that. If it was going towards me and it caught that, it would throw it right into your chest. So if you're ever running these belt grinders, make sure you're always conscious of the orientation of that direction. If it grabs the blade, it could be dangerous. So now the handle is going to be made out of chain, and it's going to nest inside these two little holes, these two little grooves, and then there'll be two other holes for the pins or screws. So I had to drill these holes, and they're more like slots, to be honest with you, and the chain handle will nest up into there. Now, I have some size 50 chain here, and it's a little bit different than the chain I made the Damascus from, but I figured after it was drawn down and curved and consolidated, I needed slightly bigger than the chain I used for the canister, so I went to size 50 chain. So I tack welded these in place, and then I drilled through each one of these holes, and so this is what it looks like. The rollers are nested up in those grooves, and then these bolts are temporarily holding it in place. Now the handle is going to be curved, and it's going to be thinner. I'm going to do some hand blacksmithing and kind of narrow that and curve that handle. But it's surprisingly comfortable for a chain, to be honest with you. I was actually surprised. I thought I was going to have to do some grinding or something to make the a little smoother, but the chain actually is a quite natural of a grip. And so here I'm going to narrow this grip. I thought it was a little too wide, so I'm doing a few heats here. I'm not getting it too hot, but I'm going to kind of crush it sideways and get it narrower. And then I'm going to induce a curve into this as well. So I'm kind of tuning up. And where there's going to be a ring on the end of the handle, I narrow that down so it can kind of transition and meet into that ring. So here is, I'm putting this curve in. And I was really careful. I could have done this in my press, but I was really wary of the press because it would remove a lot of these. I want to see the chain. I want the chain to be, I wanted to have that look. I wouldn't want to crush it so that it was kind of not recognizable as chain. So here's the curve of the handle, and I got to go and do a lot of sanding and clean up on that. But here's my heat treat on my blade. I got a really good heat treat on this blade. My files told me it was right around 61, and that's on the Rockwell C scale. So it's probably a little lower than that. It's probably like 59 or 60, but my file said 61. So this is my CNC plasma table I'm going to use to cut out this little ring. Most karambits have like an integral little ring you'll see at the end of the handle. And so I just use my CNC plasma cutter to cut this ring out. And here's what the ring looks like. This is going to get beveled and rounded a little bit for comfort. So I rounded the inside and I rounded the outside because normally you spin it on your hand. And so it's going to nest in amongst those rollers and it's going to get welded. That's what it looks like. So here it is. I'm running my MIG welder. I was going to TIG weld this, but I ended up using a Dremel tool to dress back the weld. And so I actually wanted the MIG was perfect. It built up that transition. So this is something I call it a link. It's not really a link, but I make something that looks like one of the chain links. I drill 2 holes and then I tap them. And so I tap them 5/16 24. There's 2 holes in this and they're 5/16 diameter by 24 threads per inch. And it just kind of looks like a link, but I didn't want to put nuts. Having a couple of nuts on there would have worked. And that's what I mocked the handle up with initially. But this is really, I think visually it kind of works with the chain. So it kind of goes right over the chain on one side. You'll see here. And then I have 2 cap head bolts that fit nice and flush. They don't protrude too much, and it's a pretty nice visual you'd see here. Now, those are a little long. I ground those down, and I used some cold blue on the end of those screws to color that after I ground it. Now, here's my parkerizing tank. One of them. I have several of these. It's not very fancy at all. This is a container used for drywall mixture, but I bought it at Home Depot, and I'm just using some parkerizing solution I mixed myself, and it turns this very dark. I'm using a manganese dioxide I use in this parkerizing setup, but it came out really nice and dark. And this little link, these have just been oiled. They have a little bit of oil residue on. After it comes out of parkerizing, you spray them down with an oil to displace that. Otherwise, it can turn white, and if you don't neutralize it with some oil. So this is post heat treat. I just finished sharpening this. And this thing came out very sharp. It came out very sharp. And I got a little paper test. You can hear it. Now, I sharpened both edges of this in the back. So you can cut with either edge. This is a double-edged knife. And so I just put this in the etch tank, or just took it out. I actually did 2 etching cycles, about 10 minutes each, and I neutralized and cleaned it off with some 1000 grit sandpaper in between those. But you can see this chain pattern. It almost looks like some kind of animal tooth, to be honest with you. Like a woolly mammoth tusk material or something. I don't know. But this shape, I actually was looking at some animal teeth profiles on Google, and that's how I kind of came up with this profile. This knife is actually patterned after an animal tooth. I really don't recall which one, but I found a chart of animal tooth profiles. But here's the finished knife, guys. And I love this one. It's really unique. Most knives that I do, I have everything kind of planned out. This knife kind of happened. I don't know. It was just not something I didn't really plan it out a lot. I kind of was almost discovering it as I was doing it and kind of coming up with solutions. The handle, and once I had the blade and it was curved, I decided to make it out of chain, and I don't know. The whole thing kind of it was kind of it developed kind of just kind of I didn't have a solid written plan in place. What do you guys think? Do you think that's a better way to do a project, or you think it's better to have everything planned out? I don't know. But you can actually hold this knife either direction, and both edges of these are sharp, and I mean sharp. Um, I actually I was spinning this knife around, and actually my knife handling skills aren't ideal, so I should have been a little careful. But this knife came out just incredible. I almost like how it's a little rougher, and I almost didn't parkerize that the chain handle. I almost left it in the forged kind of the forged state it was in with the scale, a little bit of scale on it. But I cleaned all that scale off and I parkerized it. But here it is. Let me know what you guys think. And I mean, it's a lot. My hands, I have very large hands, and so uh, this blade is actually a pretty good size. I think this blade is almost 8 inches long, somewhere around there. So it's a little bit. Most karambits are smaller, and most karambits have more of a hook. They have a more of a pronounced little curve. So this doesn't really follow any type of, you know, I don't know. This is almost like an apocalyptic weapon, or it looks like some type of organic structure, kind of, almost like some type of. Almost looks like you ever seen that movie Alien? Remember the tail of the alien, and it almost looks like the alien's tail, the chain shape and everything. It almost looks like that the tail of the alien. And so xenomorph, I think is what the alien was called, something like that. But anyway, let me know what you think, guys, and maybe I'll do some more of these knives where I'm not quite sure how it's going to turn out. I'll just start with a basic idea and kind of let the details kind of, you know, almost like a discovery instead of a creation. But I really had a lot of fun making this knife, and I hope you guys enjoy it. I really appreciate your time. If you guys watch this video, I really want to thank you. It means a lot to me, and hopefully I'm gonna make some more of these videos. I hope they're worthy of your time, to be honest. I want you guys to stay safe out there, and thanks for watching. I'll see you guys on the next one. Thank you very much.